one, refined carbohydrates. You gotta get rid of the refined carbohydrates. As a matter of fact, they are not a food, okay? Refined carbohydrates are not a food. We are not supposed to be eating any of them. It's not that we're supposed to eat them sparingly. We're supposed to completely eliminate them from our food supply. What are refined carbohydrates? That's white bread, that's white flour, that's breakfast cereals, that's pizza dough, that's white rice, that's pasta, okay? And notice I said refined, okay? Refined means processed. That means that all of anything that was good in it was taken out. The vitamins, the minerals, the trace elements, etc. They were taken out, okay? That also means the fiber was taken out too. Anything good in it was removed from it. This is what allows it to stay on the shelf for longer, okay? When you take things out that are natural, now it's unnatural. It can last longer, okay? Now, this is why these foods, once they're robbed of all their nutrients, okay, they've been processed out of them, this is why they're then enriched, because they were poor, okay? So they're then enriched with unnatural vitamins and minerals and unnatural fiber that your body most likely will not recognize because real recognize real. So you gotta stay away from the refined carbohydrates. Hugely important. If I were to sort of rank what are the most dangerous foods in the American diet, in the European diet, it is refined carbohydrates, bar none. It's one of the most dangerous foods out there because insulin resistance and high blood sugar is the cause of most diseases because it creates so much inflammation in the body, okay? It paralyzes the immune system. So you gotta stay away from, eliminate all of them, okay? They are not needed, they are not a food, eliminate them, okay? Number two, starches, okay? Starches, again, starch is rice. I mean, even, the rice is a problem as well too, but also corn, potatoes, yuca, cassava, for those in the Caribbean and African brothers and sisters. These are things that you need to remove as well too because they turn into sugar in the body, okay? Potato turns in, especially the white potato, turns straight into sugar. I'll give you an example. If you were to compare the Japanese purple potato to the white potato, there's no comparison. The white potato is an empty food, okay? It's a starch, and starch is sugar, and it converts into sugar in the body, elevates the sugar, okay? So stay away from starches as well too. Again, corn, potatoes, yuca, cassava. Stay away from the starch, okay, as well too. And starch is acidic as well too. And we all know that sugar is acid. It makes the body more acidic as well too, which makes the body more inflamed as well too, all right? And all chronic diseases, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, all have the underlying pinning of inflammation, okay? So starches turn into acid, acid makes the body inflamed. Number three, high glycemic index foods, okay? High glycemic, what is high glycemic? Glycemic means that it elevates the blood sugar. So when you eat this food, and let's say you were to take your blood sugar after consuming it, you will notice that it spikes your blood sugar levels. So these are high glycemic index foods. You wanna eat low glycemic index foods, okay? But the high glycemic index foods are gonna be the things I just mentioned. The refined carbohydrates, the starches, sugary drinks. Do not drink liquid sugar, okay? And when I tell you that is the worst way to consume sugar, it is by far the worst. Let me explain why. Because the natural way to consume sugar is through fruit, okay? Fruit have fiber, okay? So fiber attaches to sugar, okay? So when you're consuming the fruit and it breaks down, the sugar is still attached to the fiber. The fiber has to be slowly broken down in the stomach, okay? As it's being slowly broken down in the stomach and in the intestines primarily, small intestines, when it's being broken down, that sugar is being slowly released when it's attached to fiber. Well, guess what? When you consume refined carbohydrates, and especially sugary beverages, which have zero fiber in them, okay? Now you have no fiber for protection. It's literally like taking sugar in your hand and throwing it into the blood, okay? Literally taking sugar in your hand and throwing it into the blood system, which is gonna make the insulin levels spike, okay? So hugely important. You wanna stay away from the sugary beverages, even the zero beverages. So when you see those Coke Zeros and whatever zeros, it may say no sugar, no carbs. Guess what? It has an artificial sweetener in it. And that artificial sweetener triggers you to eat more. That artificial sweetener actually has been proven in science, even though it technically doesn't have any carbs or sugar in it, it increases your risk for diabetes and also obesity. And as I told you guys before, the more fat we have in the body, the more gummed up that lock and key system will be. So insulin won't be able to get blood sugar inside of the cell. Okay, so you got to stay away from the sugary beverages, no matter how they come, sodas, or, even when you're making these beverages that are lemonade or whatever it may be, you want to stay away from those as well too. And then you want to eat high glycemic fruits, even high glycemic fruits. You want to eat those sparingly too, because they aren't really the issue. High glycemic fruit, an example of that will be watermelon, which is actually very nutritious for you. But because you have such an imbalance in your body when it comes to sugar, and you have such an imbalance when it comes to insulin resistance, because of that, now you want to lay off of the things that are even natural that have a high glycemic index as well too. So you want to stay away from those like watermelon and cantaloupe. In the meantime, you can have like a cup and a half, which will be fine because they have very few carbs, but you want to kind of eat those sparingly as well too, all right? Until you start to regain that balance, that blood sugar balance and that insulin balance back in the body. And then number 4, dairy. You want to stay away from dairy, and why? As I mentioned before, that lock and key system becomes gummed up with saturated fat. And guess where we get a lot of our saturated fat? Dairy products. As a matter of fact, if you were to look at milk, and milk is cheese, but cheese is the water removed from milk. So when you see cheese, like back in the days, you see these blocks of cheese that people will get, and that's how it comes. That is simply milk with the water removed from it, dehydrated milk, okay? So that leftover portion is the fat. That's all cheese is. It is the fat left over from the milk. So it's so important that you understand that when you're consuming dairy, you're putting fat in the body, and when you're putting fat in the body, you can gum up that lock and key system by putting so much fat deposits, not only in your muscles, but also in your liver too, which is hugely important because your liver not only manufactures, sugar or glycogen or glucose, but it also stores sugar as well too. Okay, so when your liver becomes fatty, now you don't have this balancing system that was created to balance your blood sugar as well too, because now your liver is fatty. Okay, diabetes is one of the number 1 causes of a fatty liver, okay, which is hugely important. And then number 5, added sugar. I say that one for last because it makes sense for a lot of people that you need to remove all of the added sugar. Now here's the thing, if you're going to remove added sugar from your diet, you need to learn how to read labels, because a lot of times when you're reading the labels, you'll see it may say it only has 5 grams of sugar in it total, which isn't necessarily good, because all of it is bad because it's unnatural sugar. But the thing that you're not looking at is the amount of servings in it. It may have 10 servings. So you're really consuming 50 grams of sugar. Okay, so if you're going to remove added sugar from your diet, that 162 pounds of sugar that I mentioned earlier, you gotta learn how to read labels, or you gotta learn how to eat natural. And what that means is eat like I suggest, eat natural whole foods, not the grocery store, but foods that have one ingredient.